we're here, as you said, at Citizens Engine Company number 2. Citizens began here in Seymour in 1884, and it's company number 2. The reason we're company number 2 is actually we're the second fire company in town of the Seymour Fire Department. In 1882, 2 years prior to Citizens forming, there was the Ocean Fire Company. It was named after the first fire truck they had, and that was formed in 1882. We do have some records that go back to 1884, but they're not as in-depth as we wish they were. So we don't have a true answer whether or not they were located in the same spot. It's believed that they were. It appears that Ocean stopped doing business and we began in August of 1884. However, it's not 100% sure. So we are actually company number 2. We often get questioned on that because there's another fire company in town, Great Hill Hose Company number 1, which this year is celebrating their 70th anniversary. So we did have approximately 60 years on them. However, they are number 1 and we are number 2 because of that. So the fire company began in 1884, and the name of the company is Citizens. Often miswrote or misspelled, or I should say, the apostrophe appears after the S because it's the citizens of the town of Seymour's firehouse. So that's one of the unique things we have. In 1884, we were the first organized as far as that is continued on in this building where we sit right now. We're here at, I think legally we're actually 20 DeForest, which no one knows. It's 26 is our mailing address. But we have sat here on what was previously Factory and Raymond Street in the 1880s. Obviously, downtown Seymour was changed dramatically in 1955 with the flood, but we're currently on the corners of Wakely and DeForest. So the fire department formed in 1884 that we know now today by Fire Chief James W. Swan. He was the first fire chief here. Now we have, in this current age, we have a captain that runs the firehouse business directly here. In 1884, we did not have captains, we had foremen. So the first foreman in the town of Seymour was Mr. Beecher. His first name escapes me right now. However, you'll see as we talk about the history of this place, many of the names that show up have meaning to other residents. The Swan family was very prevalent in this town. You'll hear the Chamberlains, the DeForests, the DeWolfs, the Boise's all had membership here over the years. And these are all names, as I'm sure everyone's well aware, that street names in town are named after, and so on and so forth. One of the first major fires that we experienced here was in 1896, the Ting Opera House, which sits behind us now. If many of you are familiar with the river, the fish bypass, which is at the Ting Dam, that was because of the Ting Mills, I believe, that were there, and the Ting Opera House, which did burn in 1896. We've had many fires over the years, but one of the unique things, or one of the good things about this firehouse, is we have firefighters' names who still live on today, who are multiple generations. I mean, sitting next to me right now, Randy is not the first in his family to be a member here. So it is unique that we still have many members that names have traveled over the years here. Behind me is one of our original hose wagons. Now, it is not original in piece. It is the original one we had, though. It was rebuilt, and Randy might be able to help me on this, in the late 70s and early 80s. I know, actually, they were out in Lancaster County getting the wheels redone, and some of the pipe fittings and things have been done in-house. However, before we had fire trucks, we had to get hose to a fire scene. And this was actually a hand-drawn hose cart. So that would mean that when the fire bells rang, there was a bell on this house in 1884, firefighters would come down here, pick this device up, and then run to the fire carrying it. So it may take 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour easily to get firefighters to the scene of a fire, unlike what we are used to today. This early fire apparatus was steam-driven. They were known as steamers. And a steamer didn't carry water. What it was a large steam engine with a pump on it. And the firefighters would have to start a fire in the engine with coal and build up pressure in order to pump the water. So they were quite heavy, much larger than what I have behind me. So they would need to be horse-drawn. Being that this firehouse is original to 1884, although with some upgrades and some corrections due to fires and the lightning strike of 1896, these horses resided here. And one of the things that often I know kids are always fascinated by about is our staircase to the second floor is a round staircase. And you'll find this in many, many firehouses of this age period. The reason horses, as many of you know, wear blinders when they're trying to keep them in line. horses get scared of the round stairs and will not progress up them. So it was a way when no one was here to keep the horses from going up on the meeting room floor.
When this firehouse was built, of course, it was built for hand-drawn and horses. And what the amazing part, I get goosebumps when I talk about this, but this floor had 4 pieces of apparatus on it. We had a ladder truck in there and 3 engines. And where the kitchen is now was the men's room, and we had to keep the door open all the time for the old pumper, for the ladder to stick through to fit in the firehouse. The trucks were bumper to bumper in here. I know at least 4 firehouses in the valley that are younger than this firehouse had the floors replaced. But it's just amazing. We had 4 pieces of apparatus on this floor from the 1800s up to today. There's still 2 pieces of apparatus in here that nothing ever happened to the floor. Another past history of the place, we had a fire upstairs in the meeting room, and Mr. Spoonheimer was past chief, past captain. He drove all 4 trucks to the fire, and he made Ripley's, believe it or not. He got all 4 trucks out of here while the place was burning. And that's quite a history right there, driving all 4 trucks to one fire. He just drove them out the door to get them out of here.
We do have an operating fire pole here. You don't see it nearly as much as you used to, particularly because new firehouses are typically built on one level. However, in urban environments, in areas where you don't have sprawling land, you do have tight quarters with multiple levels. So you will still see them periodically in newer firehouses, but they are a rarity. I only know of 2 others in this part of the state that have fire poles readily available. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we typically don't have firefighters staying here day to day, so there's not always someone upstairs. Our average firefighter probably isn't going to run upstairs to use the pole to come back down during a fire. However, it still is functional, and if there was someone upstairs right now, they may use it if there was a fire.
Well, the muster truck, it's a 39 Ford. That's for when we go to musters. And sometimes we use it for parades. And our antique, the 1936 Seagrave, which is sitting over there, we had that redone. Oh, I don't
1978, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, and that's our parade piece, and we've been state champs for many years with that in firemen's parades. It's quite a piece of apparatus. Everything's original on it. We had it once again repainted and everything, but all the equipment, everything's original.
And one of the interesting things about the 1936 Seagrave is it was purchased here by the town of Seymour in 1936 from Seagrave, which was based out of Ohio at the time. The apparatus came here and was in service until 1969. In 1969, it was purchased by the company, being that there is still a bit of a difference between the company being a membership and the fire department being a town entity. Although we exist in the town, the company actually owns it, and they're the ones that fully restored it and get to take it out. And I'm fortunate enough to be one of the handful of people that's allowed to drive it, and given that honor, it is a little scary.
And a funny thing about the antique, well, years ago we went to Baltimore, we came in first place down there, and every time we used to get judged at a muster or an event, the judges would get us we had a red seat, and it says Seagraves had black seats. So my father wrote to Seagrave, and believe it or not, Seagrave on Ohio still had our blueprints. And when Seymour ordered that Seagrave, they added in specifications for a red seat. So the blueprints are posted on the wall over here in our glass cage, and every time we get judged now, we just bring the blueprints with us, and it says right there, Seymour specified a red seat. So that was the end of the black seat.
Membership here is 100% volunteer. No one is reimbursed for their time here. They show up when it used to be the bell went off or the horn went off. Now it's their text messages or their pagers or radio notifies them of a call. Or in this day and age, actually social media, sometimes you find out quicker than your own sources. They respond from their jobs, their home, their family life. They take time away and come here. The difference we've seen over the years, though, is many, many years ago, just about every gentleman in this town probably had some military service, or if they weren't, a family member did. We don't have that sort of background now. However, we are still heavily built around that with our ranks, our captains, our lieutenants, and our different officers' positions. We are still regimental like the military. That being said, it's changed. We had a talk earlier. how the average firefighter, in 1960 was probably the sole provider for his family. He worked one job, and maybe his wife didn't work. It's much different now, as we're all aware. Our lives are definitely a little busier than they used to be, especially our children, with activities and things. So it definitely draws on the family life. One of the things I keep saying, and I referred to earlier, is the gentlemen or the males. Up until the 1990s, we were exclusively a men's group. Women were welcome to join, however, it did not occur. We do now have at least a half dozen female members, and we've had approximately 10 over the past 16 years. So there are female members that make up the ranks today, which is something you wouldn't have seen here, especially on the volunteer side 30 to 40 years ago. When the firehouses were formed in the valley between 1800, even Civil War 1865 area to the 1920s, firehouses were initially a social club. It was a way to maybe get away from the family for a little bit. We can tell this because our meetings in the 1920s were held on Saturdays, Saturday evenings, probably a night for the boys to get away. Definitely more of a social atmosphere back then. We've certainly seen a change in a conversation I had earlier was discussing how younger members today are often using this as a stepping stone to become career firefighters, to make a paycheck. And it's very difficult for us to sometimes entice volunteers simply because, why should I do this for free? What is the motivation? I'm speaking for my generation and even before, but we're a me generation, and many of us have to be. So it's, maybe I want to fight fires, but I don't want to do the social aspects. So there's definitely a bit of a headache with getting new membership along the ways, but it's something we're fortunate. This part of the state in particular, the Valley, is still wrought with volunteers, and it's not the norm throughout the state. So we are fortunate to, again, be 100% volunteer. It is definitely not for the weak of heart. There are lots of people out there qualified and able, and we'd love to get more of them there. But it's certainly not for everyone. I can say that.
I agree. It's we see some terrible things out there, and it's part of our job. Like I said, if we deliver a baby or we pull someone out of a window, we're not heroes. That's part of our job, and I've done many things. Got people out of buildings and stuff, and one call I'll never forget. I was home with my two sons. They were small at the time, and there was a structure fire that came in, a person trapped up the street from me. And I said to myself, should I stay home, bring the kids with me? What should I do? I said, I'm going. And I told Jeff, I said, sit by the car here. Daddy's got to go inside. And I pulled the gentleman out. I mean, he got burnt, but I saved him. And I'm not a hero. It's what we do every day. I mean, an alarm could go in right now. We could pull someone out of a building. And it's never in the paper that Tim Willis, Randy Lewis, or any of our brother firemen are heroes. It's what we're born to do. It's our job.
Unfortunately, one of the things that comes along with it, and Randy mentioned it with seeing bad things, is in this country, unfortunately, we lose about 100 firefighters a year on average. We lose more than 200 a year to suicide. The things that are seen are very difficult. Post-traumatic stress disorder is very, very real, whether you collect a paycheck or not for your job, and it is definitely something that we are more apt to talk about in the past. Years ago, you didn't talk about something if you were feeling bad. You did your job. You might, be given a hard time if you whined about it. People would say, well, what are you worried about? You survived. You didn't have an issue. And it's definitely something we see today, but unfortunately, we're losing twice as many firefighters to suicide as we are in the line of duty. I use the term we are all professional firefighters here, whether we collect a paycheck or not. Years ago, and I'm sure Frank, you could speak to this, or Randy, when you walked through the door, you were given your rubber coat and your boots and said, have at it, kid. That is a much, much different process to this day. Now you have to go through a minimum of what's known as Firefighter 1. It's a 160-hour training program before you're even allowed to go into a building. So we had a car fire the other day where we had a gentleman who couldn't even put an air pack on, and he's been here well over a year because he hasn't completed that training yet. So it's a huge sacrifice, and that's one of really the biggest things I think often people don't realize. It's the time away from family just to be ready to do this job. We have to do it, though. Firefighting today, whether you collect a paycheck or you're a volunteer, you're a professional, and you're very similar to an athlete. However, you don't know when it's time for that big game.
I'd say either the bank fire on Main Street or New Haven Copper when it blew up. We had two big fires down New Haven Copper, but the last fire we had down, we had an explosion. We had three people burned, three firemen burned.
Yep.
Yes, they got burned pretty bad.
That was April of 1986, I believe.
So, yes.
I was a little one. I remember coming down and watching the
And
next day.
when Main Street burned, I was up on a roof doing a trench cut, and the roof caved in. And unfortunately, Eagle Hose was there for me at Solia because our ladder truck was out of commission, and he saved my life. My mother was there. My father was a fireman, and everybody screaming. But I got off the roof safely. But it was a scary call. But that's probably the two biggest fires in town that I could remember. I mean, we had a lot of big ones, but they were the two biggest. And one of the biggest I ever been on was the BF Goodrich fire. I spent 3 days down there. That was never seen anything like it in my life. I hope not to see another one of them. But that was the biggest fire ever. Well, we were here, matter of fact, we got a call that there was smoke in the building, and we arrived over there. It was there was 3 stores alongside it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Frank or Tim.
No, you're
And
right.
it started in a coffee shop over there, and it spread into the walls and got into the bank, and it just in a matter of minutes was out of control. We called up mutual aid, and I went up on a roof. My brother was captain then, and there's pictures in the firehouse of me going up on the roof, and I was up there with a saw doing a cut in the roof, and the roof just started caving in. So I just ran and jumped for the wall. I was hanging onto the wall, and I heard Eagle's ladder truck hitting the wall, and I just went over the wall. It was a scary thing, let me tell you. A lot of close calls, but that's what we're here for. I mean, like Tim says, we don't get paid to do this, and I don't think there's a lot of new people in town don't realize what we do for nothing. Risk our lives every time there's an alarm. I don't care if it's a car fire, a house fire, whatever it is. It's just, you're out there risking your life, and we're doing it for nothing. Like my father always said, if you're going to do something for credit, don't bother doing it. And we don't do it for credit. This is part of our job. We're not heroes. We're just part of our jobs.
Well, one of the first and foremost things I can speak for with the change over the years is just the we refer to as PPE, the personal protective equipment, the ensemble we wear to go into a burning building. When some of these other gentlemen here joined, again, it was rubber boots, a rubber jacket, a helmet and some gloves, and off you went. Today, the fire gear we wear costs over $3,000 per firefighter, and that's without the air pack, the SCBA that they wear. That's another $5,000. So to get a firefighter ready to go into a building, it's about a $10,000 bill. That equipment allows us to go into the burning buildings. The temperatures we're seeing, we were fighting a different fire than we were 30 years ago. Fires in homes, even up into the 80s, were basically cotton-based, textile-based, woods, papers. We see a lot of plastics now. The difference is we refer to modern furniture versus what we call legacy furniture. The time it took for that fire to get going was astronomical. A fire may take 10 to 15 minutes to really get going, whereas now we're seeing within 90 seconds. Typically a 911 call hasn't been made before that area may be untenable. So as far as equipment, that's one of the changes. We can now go into places we weren't able to before. That isn't necessarily always a good thing, though. Sometimes we go farther than we should, and we can't necessarily tell where we are. Aggressive firefighting puts out fires. However, we still have to be safe, and there is a danger. One of the things I tell some of our new members, and I'm heavily involved with training, is the fire doesn't know that it's not in New York City and this isn't FDNY. Fires are just as dangerous here as they are in big cities. Thankfully, our frequency is much, much lower. However, you can get killed here just like you can anywhere else. So fortunately, we have not had any serious injuries or deaths in recent time. The company did have a fatality, I believe in 1960 on North Main Street at a brush fire. A gentleman passed away from a heart attack, and he is recognized at the State Fallen Firefighters Memorial in Windsor Locks.
I think the ironic part about that, what Tim's saying about our gear, when I first joined, it was more of staying dry than getting yourself protected from the heat into the buildings. And it was funny, we had aluminum helmets, like you said, rubber coats. And today you wear a rubber coat, this melty, and boots, like a hip boots, like fishing boots. It was just amazing. And I can recall the incident down BF Goodrich. One of our members we're putting a hard suction in the draft out of the Housatonic River, and he fell into the river. And the first thing that happened, his boots got filled with water, and we didn't get him. It took a pike pole to get him out of the water. It's lucky we got him out. But like Tim said, the technology today is, I mean, water still puts out fire. It did it 200 years ago, it still does it today, but just the technology and the protective gear we have to wear today is just amazing, and the heat we could put up with it inside of a building.
The standard ensemble, which is your helmet, coat, pants, boots, gloves, your fire protection hood, and your air pack, your SCBA, you're talking about, on average, about 60 pounds. But that's not carrying any equipment. That's not carrying any extra tools in your pocket, and that's not carrying anything with your hand. A firefighter without a tool in his hand really is useless inside of a burning building. So it's not unusual for us to enter into a building and have approximately 100 pounds of added equipment with us before we walk through that door. Firefighting is the most violent, harsh environment you can put yourself into, and you're doing it with an extra 100 pounds on you. So it can definitely be a little overwhelming.
And believe it or not, our females do a great job. You know, everybody says, "Oh, you can't have a woman being a fireman, firefighter, or whatever." And they're right in the burning buildings with us. They go to school and everything. It's just amazing. It's a thrill to see them in here.
I absolutely despise the winter before you put a fire into it. I can think of a fire a few years ago we had on the other side of town where it was the middle of a blizzard, and I remember stretching a hose line, and here I am. I was born pretty instead of tall, and I'm trying to step through 2 feet of snow carrying a hose line. And it was certainly overwhelming to get through there. And by the time you get to the door, you're beat up, let alone having to enter in and actually do your job now. So New England is unique, and if you wait 10 minutes, you'll have a different form of weather. And I'm sure Randy can speak to it as well. We've had fires in every form of weather you can get around here.
Well, funny thing too, going back maybe even 20 years ago, most of the trucks were open cab, and we used to respond to Griffin Hospital. And many times we went down Route 8 with the chains on the trucks, and we used to ride the back of the trucks. I mean, now we have air conditioning in the trucks, heat in the trucks. And we used to get down, time we got down to Griffin Hospital, the cab was full of snow, and we'd come off the truck like a snowman. We were just frozen because we used to either ride the side of the truck or the back of the truck. And many times going to alarms the same way, just ride the back and ride the side. And you got to somebody's, God bless, with somebody's house burning, you're like a snowman. You're frozen already. So it's, you know, technology, times have really changed.
Very little of what our fire department does has anything to do with fighting fires. When all else fails, you call 911 and the fire department comes. We respond to smells in your house, hazardous materials incidents. We assist at medical calls. Although we're not a medical agency, we will help Seymour EMS. We respond to motor vehicle accidents, burnt food on the stove. Very little of what we do is putting fires out. So, that being said, we're a different beast than we were even 10 years ago, let alone 20, 30, 40, and 50. So during extreme weather, we prepare ahead of time with hurricanes fresh on our mind. If it looks like we're going to take a hit, we will have standbys here. Firefighters will stay here. Years ago, there was a bunk room here. The situation has changed for our demand, but we will have crews, and it's not unusual even during a blizzard to have 15 to 20 firefighters spend the night here ready to go if there is an issue. Firefighters are very fortunate is that we are well liked. We typically see people at their worst. However, for the most part, people like firefighters. There is a draw to that. There's a positive reinforcement on our end. However, very often we're not necessarily at your home, at your work, at your vehicle during the best of times. So again, we see people at their worst. Fortunately, the Seymour Fire Department is a budgeted town item. We receive funds from the town for equipment, things of that nature, training, maintenance, the upkeep of the building. However, the donations, if you see a boot drive, if you see a special fundraiser, a pancake breakfast, that money is utilized for many of the social aspects here, as well as very often we'll purchase additional equipment above and beyond what the town can provide us. So very often, if we're doing a lobster dinner or some type of special event, it's to get that equipment to help us, to help you, something a little more advanced. So there definitely is a big end of fundraising on it and donations as well. Our letter drive, fortunately the citizens, the residents of the town of Seymour are very good to us in helping us with that. But we are a town-funded agency as well for equipment. I think sometimes our residents forget, if we were to have a career fire department here, In order to have one firefighter on duty 24/7, you'd actually have to have 4 employees. With training, costs of benefits, salary and all that, it would be well over $150,000 per person. So you're looking to have one firefighter on duty 24/7, approximately $600,000. Now, in the fire service, due to OSHA regulations, we operate with 2 firefighters in, 2 firefighters out. So to go to a fire and have anything even start to be done, we would need 4 people, which would be 16 employees. We're looking at roughly the cost to even show up with 2 firefighters to be able to go inside, roughly $2.4 million a year to the town. And that would only be 2 people. We normally need anywhere between 18 to 25 firefighters to put out an actual house fire. So the numbers are astronomical, and the savings we provide by being volunteers. One of the favorites of town residents is Popcorn Ball Sunday, where Santa gets to ride around in the fire trucks. We make lots of noise, wake everyone up on a Sunday morning in the winter right before Christmas, and throw out popcorn balls. That is completely funded 100% by the company. That is not a town-funded thing. That is something our members spend money out of our own pockets to provide for the town. There are other events like that, such as our fire prevention, our open houses. This is, again, where our members are showing up on their own time. They're not receiving pay, and we're purchasing things from the company. Every year around Halloween, there's a town trick-or-treating day right done here in town, downtown. All that candy comes directly out of our membership. It does not come from town funds, anything like that.
Uniforms.
So, absolutely. Randy just mentioned uniforms for our parades that we travel. We go to different areas. Those are all paid for out of pocket by the company itself, not by the town.
Well, we used to have 4 breakfasts a year. We got it down to 2 in our lobster thing. And now 2 years ago, we started a carnival. And all that money, once again, is raised to help support the company, like the uniforms, the candy we buy for Halloween, all little things like that. It's a great support from the community. It's good PR for the company. We just had two of our members go out to Texas with the Beagle Falls Fire Department. They bought, it was a $250,000 worth of goods they brought out. And it was great PR for us, and it's the little things like that we pay for the gas for the truck that went out there. It's things like that to help people. It's one big brotherhood, sisterhood here. This is what we're here for, to help other people. And so people come down to help us by giving donations, supporting our breakfasts and our lobster thing. It's a great tradition, and we love to do things for the town.